Ever stop to think about, like, what you're actually breathing in
Yeah.
with every single breath? I mean, beyond the oxygen and stuff, obviously. Get this. We could be inhaling something like 1,000 to, get this, 10 billion fungal spores every single day.
Wild, right?
It really makes you realize just how much is invisible in the air around us, right?
Totally.
When we talk about these airborne microbes, that's bacteria, fungi, viruses, it's like there's a whole other world just floating around us, and it impacts us more than we might think.
That's a lot to unpack. So today, we're doing a deep dive into specifically airborne bacteria and fungi. We're going to uncover the risks, where they come from, and why it should matter to you. And helping us out today, we have a scientific review article called A Review of Pathogenic Airborne Fungi and Bacteria, Unveiling Occurrence, Sources, and Profound Human Health Implication.
Catchy title, right? Definitely rolls right off the tongue.
But really, it's got some wild stuff in it. Like, did you know that some of these microbes can travel, get this, across continents?
Continents.
Really?
I mean, they're microscopic. How do they manage that?
They basically hitchhike on things like air currents, dust clouds, even storms. Those can carry them incredibly far.
That's kind of amazing when you think about it. It really shows how interconnected everything is, even at a microscopic level.
Mhm.
But let's, zoom in a bit. You mentioned this invisible world of microbes. Just how common are we talking? Is it like a rare encounter, or is this like a constant microbial party happening around us?
Think of it as a constant, invisible presence, Indoors, outdoors, we're always surrounded by these microbial communities. And just like any ecosystem, they change based on, well, everything. Location, the season, even what we do, all of it plays a role.
Okay, so how do these fungi and bacteria even become airborne in the first place? What launches them into the air we breathe?
Well, there are natural sources, of course, like the soil, water, plants, they release microbes. But, and this might sound gross, even we do.
Wait, really? Yeah.
Yeah, every time we exhale, every cough, we send out these tiny droplets that can carry microbes. It's just natural.
So we're all contributing to this invisible cloud. But are these encounters always bad? Or is it just like a sneeze here and there and that's it?
Well, it varies. Some people might just get some mild allergies, a stuffy nose, but for others, especially those with weaker immune systems, it can be more serious. We're talking infections like pneumonia and in some cases even meningitis.
Wow, that took a turn. So it's not just about, having a good air freshener. These things can actually pose some serious health risk.
Exactly. And certain professions, like if you're a farmer or a healthcare worker, they actually have a much higher risk just from the nature of their work.
Starting to feel like we're surrounded. Before we spiral, let's get specific. This research paper calls out some of the usual suspects when it comes to problem-causing bacteria and fungi. Where do we even start with this lineup?
Well, a very common one is Alternaria. It's one of the main culprits behind those seasonal allergies and asthma, but it can also cause eye infections.
Eye infections.
Yeah.
That's not good. What else is lurking out there?
Cladosporium is another big one, super common, especially inside. And while it can cause respiratory problems, it's also been linked to, and this one's common, nail fungus.
Okay, nail fungus is definitely relatable. It seems like these microbes can really pop up anywhere. What about penicillium? I know that's where we get penicillin from, but I have a feeling there's more to it.
Right. Penicillium is a mixed bag. Yeah, some species are super important for medicine, but others can actually trigger allergic reactions and infections, especially in folks with weaker immune systems.
That's like finding out your favorite bakery also makes something you're allergic to. Bummer. What other tiny troublemakers are we dealing with?
Well, there's Fusarium, a fungus that likes to hang out on crops. And get this, it produces toxins that can mess with both our immune systems and our intestines.
You're telling me I could get food poisoning from a fungus?
Basically, yeah. You can't even see it coming.
It's like I'd cry. Anything else we should be on the lookout for?
Aspergillus is another one. It's pretty well known, actually, but for all the wrong reasons.
How so? What makes it so bad?
There's one species, Aspergillus fumigatus. It's the main cause of something called invasive aspergillosis. It's a really nasty lung infection, and it can be fatal, especially for people with, weakened immune systems.
2 strikes against Aspergillus already. Is there more?
Sadly, yes. Another species, Aspergillus flavus, produces this thing called aflatoxin B1, and that's been linked to, get this, an increased risk of lung cancer, so it's not always an immediate threat. We could be talking long-term health consequences, too.
Okay, that's 3 strikes. Aspergillus is officially off my list. What about bacteria, though? Any bacterial bad guys we should be aware of?
Oh, definitely. In fact, the bacterial lineup is just as concerning, maybe even more so. Take, for example, Staphylococcus aureus. You probably have some on your skin right now.
Wait, seriously? On me right now?
It's true. It's a common resident of our skin's microbiome. Usually it's harmless, but if it gets into your bloodstream, it can cause serious problems, like even life-threatening conditions like sepsis.
That's a bit unsettling. Never thought something so common could be so dangerous. What else is on this bacterial hit list?
Well, we've got Neisseria meningitidis, which can, you guessed it, cause meningitis.
Meningitis, that's a serious brain and spinal cord infection, right?
That's the one. And then there's Streptococcus pneumonia, another common one, often the culprit behind pneumonia, especially in children.
This is starting to feel like a horror movie, except the monsters are microscopic. Seems like there's no escape, no matter where we go. But is there a difference between, say, the air inside versus being outdoors? Like, is my living room any safer than a walk in the park?
That's a really good question, and it's not as simple as saying one is riskier than the other. Both indoor and outdoor air have their own unique risks and sets of microbes.
So it's not just as simple as stay inside or go outside. There are other things going on.
100%. And understanding those factors is key to really understanding the risks.
All right, so let's break down those factors. Let's start with the great outdoors. What are we breathing in when we're outside?
Well, with outdoor air, you got to remember it's constantly changing, right? Location plays a huge role. Like urban areas, they're going to have a different mix of microbes compared to, say, the countryside.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm guessing all the traffic and pollution doesn't help.
Oh, definitely not. And then there's the time of year. Just like, plants and animals, microbial populations have their seasons. Some thrive in the warmer months, others like it cooler.
So the air we breathe is literally changing with the seasons. That's wild. What about, like, what we do? Do our activities affect this too?
For sure. Think about something like composting. Great for the environment, right? But it actually releases a specific bacteria. Thermophilic actinomycetes is the name. A mouthful, right?
Definitely wouldn't want to try and say that 3 times fast.
Right. Anyway, these bacteria love heat. That's what thermophilic means. And they've actually been linked to things like asthma and something called hypersensitivity pneumonitis. Basically, it's inflammation of the lungs.
So even activities that are good for the planet have trade-offs. It's all about being aware, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's head inside. What's happening in the air, in our homes, offices, places like that?
Indoor air is interesting because it's so affected by what we do and the buildings themselves. Ventilation, the stuff our homes are made of, even just how many people are in a room. It all changes the types and amounts of microbes.
So it's like each indoor space has its own, microbial fingerprint.
Exactly. And this research it actually points out some really interesting findings about these different indoor environments.
Okay, lay it on me. What did they find?
Hospitals, for example. Lots of Aspergillus and Staphylococcus aureus there. Not super surprising given, there are sick people and constant cleaning and such.
Yeah, it's a bit unnerving to think about those microbes just hanging out in hospitals, even with all those precautions. What about, regular homes? Anything surprising there?
Cladosporium and penicillium are common culprits in homes. Usually they're coming from dust and damp spots. They're pretty much everywhere, really.
So keeping things clean and dry is key. Got it. What about schools? What are kids breathing in?
Kindergartens in particular, they found a huge variety of bacteria. We're talking Bacillus, Staphylococcus aureus, we talked about that one, as well as Micrococcus and Streptococcus. And for fungi, they found Aspergillus, Cladosporium, Penicillium again, everywhere, and Rhodotorula.
Okay, I need a chart to keep track of all this. Is there a way to, sum up the differences between these indoor and outdoor environments?
Basically, outdoor air just has a wider variety of microbes, simply because it's exposed to, more. Soil, water, plants, animals. Indoor air, on the other hand, it's more about what we do and the materials in the building.
So it's like comparing a wild, crazy forest to, a carefully planned garden. The forest has more different species, but the garden is more, controlled. Doesn't mean it's safer, though, right?
Perfect analogy. That's exactly it. Both have potential risks. And look, it's not about being scared of these microbes, but about knowing about them and, taking steps to be safe.
Which brings up the big question, what can we actually do? I mean, knowing all this, are we just supposed to accept it? Or are there practical things we can do to protect ourselves and our families? So knowing all this, are we just supposed to accept it? Or are there practical things we can do to protect ourselves and our families?
No, not at all. Awareness is key, right? Once you know what you're dealing with, you can actually do something about it.
Okay, I like that. So knowledge is power when it comes to these microbes. What can we start doing, even today, to make a difference?
Well, one of the easiest things, and it's really effective too, is good old-fashioned ventilation. Just opening your windows, even for a bit each day, can really make a difference. It gets rid of that stale air and those microbes that might be hanging out.
Fresh air, huh? Who knew it was such a powerful tool? What else you got?
Air filtration's another good one. HEPA filters, those air purifiers, they can trap a lot of those particles floating around, including those pesky bacteria and fungal spores.
So those air purifiers we see advertised actually do something. They're not just a gimmick.
Nope, they can be really helpful, especially for folks with allergies. And of course, we can't forget the basics.
You mean like washing our hands? That's not exactly a groundbreaking revelation.
True, but you'd be surprised how many people forget. Washing your hands regularly, especially during cold and flu season, that's huge for stopping the spread of all sorts of germs, including the ones we've been talking about.
It seems like the simple things still matter, even when we're talking about this invisible world of stuff. Any other tips for navigating this microbial minefield?
If you're someone who's, more vulnerable, wearing a mask when you're in crowded places or areas with bad ventilation can really help. It's a simple barrier, but it can make a big difference.
So ventilation, filtration, hygiene, masks, those are our weapons in this fight against these, well, invisible forces. It's not about living in a bubble, but about knowing the risks and taking some practical steps to stay safe. Would you agree?
100%. We live in a world full of microbes, and most of the time, we all get along just fine. But, like we said, knowledge is power. When you know the risks, you can make better choices.
This has been a really fascinating look into, well, something we rarely think about. I'm definitely more aware of what I'm breathing in now, but I do appreciate that it's not all doom and gloom. There are things we can do.
Exactly. And it's important to remember our bodies are pretty amazing. We've evolved to deal with a lot of these microbes. Our immune systems are there for a reason, but being informed, it lets us take those extra steps to protect ourselves, especially for those who might need it more.
Well said. To everyone listening, I definitely encourage you to, keep learning about this stuff. And remember those simple but effective things we talked about. Just a little awareness and action can go a long way.
Absolutely. Don't forget, there's a whole world out there we can't even see, so stay curious.
That's a wrap on today's deep dive into the wild world of airborne microbes. They're tiny but mighty, that's for sure. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and breathe easy.